Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. Today we will be talking about the region of Caria. Caria was a region of western Anatolia, extended along the coast from mid-Ionia south to Lycia and east to Phrygia. The Ionian and Dorian Greeks colonized the west of it and joined the Carian population in forming Greek-dominated states there. The inhabitants of Caria, known as Carians, had arrived there before the Ionian and Dorian Greeks. They were described by Herodotus as being of Minoan descent, while the Carians themselves maintained that they were Anatolian, mainlanders intensely engaged in seafaring, and were akin to Mysians and the Lydians. The Carians did speak an Anatolian language, known as Carian, which does not necessarily reflect their geographic origin, as Anatolian once may have been widespread. Also, closely associated with the Carians were the Lalages, which could be an earlier name for Carians, or for a people who had preceded them in the region and continued to exist as part of their society in a reputedly second-class status. Kramer's detailed catalog of Carian towns in classical Greek is based entirely on ancient sources. The multiple names of towns and geomorphic features, such as bays and headlands, reveal an ethnic layering consistent with the known colonization. Coastal Caria begins with Didyma south of Miletus, but Miletus had been placed in the pre-Greek Caria. South of it is the Lassicus Sinus and the towns of Iasus and Bargilia, giving an alternative name of Barcoleticus Sinus, and nearby Cindy, which the Carians called Andanus. After Bargilia is Carianda, and then on the Bodrum Peninsula, Mindus, 56 miles from Miletus. In the vicinity is Naziandus, exact location unknown. On the tip of the Cape Termarium is Termera, and on the other side, Ceramicus Sinus. It was formerly crowded with numerous towns. Halicarnassus, a Dorian Greek city, was planted there among 6 Carian towns: Thiangella, Sibdi, Medmassa, Uranium, Padaza, and Telmesis. These, with Mindus and Sinagella, make up the 8 Lalegi towns. Also on the north coast of the Ceramicus Sinus is Ceramus and Bargasus. On the south of the Ceramicus Sinus is the Carian Chersones, or Cape Creo, also called Doris, after the Dorian colony of Cnidus. At the base of the peninsula is Bobassus, from which an earlier name, the Babazia Chersones, had been derived. It was now Acanthus and Dulopolis. South of the Carian Chersones is Doridus Sinus, the Gulf of Doris. the locale of the Dorian Confederacy. There are 3 bays in it: Bobasius, Thymnius, and Sconus. The last enclosing the town of Hydda, or Haida as the case may be. In the Gulf, somewhere, are Euthene, Pitaeum, and an island, Elaeus, near Lorima. On the south shore is the Cynossema, opposite Cyma, or Cyme. South of there is the Rhodian Perea, a section of the coast under Rhodes. It includes Larimna in Odemus Bay, Gelos, Tizanassa, the headland of Peridion, Panedon, Cape Marmaris with Physicus, Amos, Fisca, also called Cressa. Beyond Cressa is the Calbis River. On the other side is Canis, near Delion, with Pelesis and Pernos between. Then follow some cities that some assign to Lydia and some to Caria. Calinda on the Indus River, Caria, and Aligna in the Gulf of Macri, the Glaucus River being the border. Other Carian towns in the Gulf are Clade and Anis. At the base of the east end of Latmus, near Euromus, and near Milas, where the current village Selimia is, was the district of Euromus, possibly Europus, formerly Idrius and Chryseros. The name Chryseros once applied to all of Caria. Moreover, Euromus was originally settled from Lycia. Its towns are Tauropolis, Plaraza, and Chrysaorus. These were all incorporated later into Mylasa, connected to the latter by a sacred way in Labranda. Around Stratonicia is also Lagina, as well as Tendeba and Astragon. Further inland towards Aden is Alabanda, noted for its marble and its scorpions, Orthosia, Consenia on the upper Meander, and Halidensis, Alinda. At the confluence of the Meander and the Harpasus is Harpasa. At the confluence of the Meander and the Orcinus, Corcinus is Antioch on the Meander, and on the Orcinus in the mountains a border town with Phrygia. Gordiatikos near Gier, founded by the Leleges and called Nino, it became Megalopolis. And Aphrodisias, sometime capital of Caria. Other towns on the Orcinus are Tymales and Plaraza, or Plaraza. Tabe was at various times attributed to Phrygia, Lydia, and Caria, and seems to have been occupied by mixed nationals. Caria also comprises the headwaters of the Indus and Aria, and Thabuzian on the border with the small state of Siberia. The name of Caria also appears in a number of early languages. Hittite, Carkesia, 1250 BC. Babylonian Karza, Elamite, and Old Persian Kirka. According to the Herodotus, the legendary King Car, son of Zeus and Creta, founded Caria and named it after him, and his brothers Lydos and Mysos founded Lydia and Mysia respectively. It is suggested that the mythological link between Caria and Minos created was for the purpose of proving the Hellenic lineage of the Carians, who disputed such association by maintaining that they were indigenous inhabitants of the mainland. The Carians refer to the shrine of Zeus as Mylassa, which is shared with the Mysians and Lydians, proving that they were brother races. Caria arose as a Neo-Hittite kingdom around the 11th century BC. The coast of Caria was part of the 6 cities when the Dorians arrived after the Trojan War in 13th century BC. In the last and southernmost waves of Greek migration to western Anatolia's coastline and occupied former Mycenaean settlements such as Knidos and Halicarnassus. Herodotus, the famous historian, was born in Halicarnassus during the 5th century BC. Greek apoikism in Caria took place mostly on the coast, as well as in the interior in great number, and groups of cities and towns were organized in local federations. Homer's Iliad records at the time of the Trojan War, the city of Miletus belonged to the Carians and was allied to the Trojan cause. Lempriere notes that as Caria probably abounded in figs, a particular sort has been called carica, and the words in cer periculum facere have been proverbially used to signify the encountering of danger in the pursuit of a thing of trifling value. The region of Caria continues to be an important fig-producing area to this day, accounting for most fig production in Turkey, which is the world's largest producer of figs. An account also cited that Aristotle claimed Caria as a naval empire occupied Epidaurus and Hermene, and that this was confirmed when the Athenians discovered the graves of the dead from Delos. Half of it were identified as Carians based on the characteristics of the weapons they were buried with. The expansionism of Lydia under Croesus, 560 to 546 BC, incorporated Caria briefly into Lydia before it fell, before the Achaemenid advanced. Caria was then incorporated into the Persian Achaemenid Empire as a province in 545 BC. The most important town was Halicarnassus, from where its sovereigns, the tyrants of the Ligdamid dynasty, 520 to 450 BC, reigned. Other major towns were Latmus, refounded by Heraclea under Latmus, Antiochia, Myndus, Laodicea, Alinda, and Alabanda. Caria participated in the Ionian Revolt, 499 to 493 BC, against the Persian rule. During the Second Persian invasion of Greece, 480 to 479 BC, the cities of Caria were allies of Xerxes the First, and they fought at the Battle of Artemisium and the Battle of Salamis, where the queen of Halicarnassus, Artemisia, commanded the contingent of 70 Carian ships. Themistocles, before the battles of Artemisium and Salamis, tried to split the Ionians and Carians from the Persian coalition. He told them to come and be on his side, or not to participate at the battles. But if they were bound down by too strong compulsion to be able to make revolt, when the battles begin to be purposely slack. Plutarch, in his work, The Parallel Lives, at the life of Themistocles, wrote that Fannius writes that the mother of Themistocles was not a Thracian, but a Carian woman, and her name was Euterpe, and Neanthus adds that she was from Halicarnassus in Caria. After the unsuccessful Persian invasion of Greece in 479 BC, the cities of Caria became members of the Athenian-led Delian League, but then returned to Achaemenid rule for about 1 century, from around 428 BC. Under Achaemenid rule, the Carian dynasty Mausolus took control of neighboring Lycia, a territory which was still held by Pixodarus, as shown by the Xanthos trilingual inscription. The Carians were incorporated into the Macedonian Empire, following the conquests of Alexander the Great and the siege of Halicarnassus in 334 BC. Halicarnassus was the location of the famed mausoleum dedicated to Mausolus, a province of Caria, between 377 and 353 BC, by his wife Artemisia II of Caria. The monument became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and from which the Romans named any grand tomb a mausoleum. Caria was conquered by Alexander III of Macedon in 334 BC, with the help of the former queen of the land, Ada of Caria, who had been dethroned by the Persian Empire, and actively helped Alexander in his conquest of Caria, on condition of being reinstated as queen. After their capture of Caria, she declared Alexander as her heir. As part of the Roman Empire, the name of Caria was still used for the geographic region, but the territory administratively belonged to the province of Asia. During the administration reforms of the 4th century, this province was abolished and divided into smaller units. Caria became a separate province as part of the Diocese of Asia. Christianity was on the whole slow to take hold in Caria. The region was not visited by St. Paul, and the only early churches seemed to be those of Laodicea and Colossae, on the extreme inland fringe of the country, which itself pursued its pagan customs. It appears that it was not until Christianity was officially adopted in Constantinople that the new religion made any real headway in Caria. In the 7th century, Byzantine provinces were abolished, and the new military theme system was introduced. The region corresponding to ancient Caria was captured by the Turks under the Mentese dynasty in the early 13th century. There are only indirect clues regarding the population structure under the Mentees and the parts played in it by Turkish migration from inland regions and by local conversions. But the first Ottoman Empire census records indicate the census records indicate in a situation not atypical for the region as a whole, a large Muslim majority reaching as high as 99%, and a non-Muslim minority as low as 1%. One of the first acts of the Ottomans after their takeover was to transfer the administrative center of the region from its millenary seat in Milas to the then much smaller Mughla, which was still better suited for controlling the southern fringes of the province. Still named Mentees until the early decades of the 20th century, the Khazars equivalent to ancient Caria are recorded by sources such as G. Sotiriadis, 1918, and S. Anagiostopoulos, 1997, as having a Greek population, averaging at around 10% of the total, ranging somewhere between 12 and 18,000, many of them reportedly recent immigrants from the islands. Most chose to leave in 1919, before the population change. This is the biblical region of Caria. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all.